It is my pleasure to welcome you to the Little Rock Sustainability Hour, brought to you by the Little Rock Sustainability Commission. Today we will discuss sustainability in and around Little Rock. Our goal is to educate and inform you on how we can all become better stewards of the community and city we live in.
Hi everyone, thank you for tuning in again into the Little Rock Sustainability Hour. I am your host, Karen Zucardi, and I am excited to dig into today's show. I also chair the Little Rock Sustainability Commission, and we have the facilitation of the Little Rock Sustainability Office. As a disclaimer, during this show, my comments and opinions are mine and are not in representation of my employer. As we all know, Little Rock is a very diverse city, and in this show, we welcome people from all sectors of our community. That being said, some of the sections of this show will be also in Spanish to be inclusive of our beautiful Latino community in Little Rock. Hola, querida comunidad latina en Little Rock. Muchas gracias a todos los que se han tomado el tiempo para escuchar nuestro programa de radio y por los correos que nos han mandado. Para nosotros significa mucho leer sus comentarios. Espero que sigan aprendiendo con nosotros y nuestros invitados. Varios de ustedes nos han dicho que quieren escuchar los consejos de sostenibilidad en español, así que al final del programa, cuando lleguemos a esos segmentos, vamos a tenerlos en inglés y en español. Yo también voy a hablar más despacio en inglés y espero que esto les ayude a entender mejor el resto del contenido del programa. Es un gran honor tener este espacio con ustedes y podernos comunicar por acá. As we have previously discussed, sustainability is a very broad subject that has many moving pieces. When we hear people talk about sustainability, there are a few themes that they may be talking about. They could be talking about food insecurity, the responsible management of scarce resources, balancing the budget of a city through policies and initiatives that encourages positive behavioral change, or the utilization of entrepreneurship to solve social and environmental problems. Today's show will be about one of the main topics in sustainability, energy. You might wonder, why is energy such an important part of the world of sustainability? Before we answer that question, though, we need to probably understand what energy is. Well, in physics, energy is defined as force that does work. But when we talk about energy in this show and in economic development, we are talking about energy consumption as it relates to our communities, our buildings, our homes, and vehicles. This type of energy comes from electricity, like the one you get from wall plugs, natural gas for cooking and heating like gasoline and diesel. So let's talk a little bit about the history of energy. Modern humans have taken from the environment to produce energy for about 200,000 years. At the beginning, we used fire as a source of energy for cooking, clearing land, and heating. Then, with that fire, we created steam, which propelled us through the Industrial Revolution. Speaking of the Industrial Revolution, while doing research for this show, we came across some interesting stories about that time in history, some of which I want to share with you all today. So let's chat real quick about some interesting facts about the Industrial Revolution. In history, there has been two major turning points in the way that humans lived. The first one is the Neolithic Revolution, which is the part of history where humans learned how to cultivate crops and domesticate animals. This happened about 10,000 years ago. The second, and the one we are talking about, is the Industrial Revolution. This one started in 1750 in England, although it eventually spread throughout Europe and the United States. The Industrial Revolution was a very dramatic was a time of a dramatic change. Some could argue that this period of history is the most defining period for human civilization that created the path for the world as we know it today. Before this revolution, most people made their living farming, and they lived in widespread rural communities. With the advance of factories, people began working for companies located in urban areas for the very first time. The advancement in industrialization also brought some environmental effects. Since the machines used in factories operated with coal, the demand for this natural resource was almost limitless. So mining companies worked around the clock and hired people from all ages to keep up with demand. Although there were numerous advancements during the Industrial Revolution, the rapid progress also caused many issues. As workers left their farms to work in factories for higher wages, it also led to a shortage of food being produced. The sharp increase in number of factories led to an increase in urban pollution. And pollution wasn't just contained to factories. As people flocked to the cities, the living conditions were deplorable as urban resources were overwhelmed. For example, sewage floated in the streets in some cities while manufacturers dumped waste from factories into rivers. Can you imagine? Water supplies were not tested and protected as they were today. Chimneys, bridges, and factory smoke blocked out much of the light in town. Coal generated huge quantities of smoke that covered towns like a blanket. As a result, regulations and laws were enacted to protect the population. The Industrial Revolution enabled Nikola Tesla and Thomas Edison to create their electrical systems that brought the first lights into our homes and businesses. Over the next 100 years, humans have done a lot to create different sources of energy. We have harvested ancient carbonized plants to burn coal, extracted natural gas and propane from the underground, created energy through water flowing downhill by building dams, cracked the atom to make steam and nuclear energy, and turned the sun rays into electricity directly. We humans have come a long way. Electricity has brought great benefits to society. For example, the creation of washing and dishwasher machines allowed people to spend less time doing household chores. The creation of artificial lighting through electricity also enabled businesses to stay open after dark, and the mass cultivations of plants. Without electricity, we would not be able to have the lifestyle that we currently have. Without electricity, we would probably have a rock in our hands pounding grain to make bread for tonight. As you can see, energy has been crucial for the development of current societies. We are who we are today thanks to our innovative ways to create energy. But the extraction of natural resources for energy creation has also created environmental problems that should not be ignored. For example, we have decimated whole mountain ranges, dug up tens of square miles of oil sand, injected chemicals into the underground searching for natural gas, and contaminated our oceans with massive oil spills. In addition, the sources of energy production that we have gotten used to are becoming scarce. And this scarcity is making us dig deeper into Mother Nature and its natural resources. If we plan to continue to evolve as civilization, we need to look into opportunities to improve and to explore new forms of energy that are not so harmful for our environment. I invite you to keep this in mind. So now that we know the history of energy and the influence, positive and negative, that it has had in our society, let's talk a little bit about electricity consumption in Arkansas. The Arkansas energy production is 44% coal, 26% natural gas, 24% nuclear, 3% hydro, and 3% solar photovoltaic and other renewables. Also, did you know that the average American home uses 50% of energy for heating and air conditioning, 15% in water heater, 10% in lighting, and 20% on household electronics? Everything from our phone chargers to our computers. The average household spends about $100 of their budget on energy every month. Did you know that the US has only 5% of the world's population, but we use approximately 23% of the world's energy? That's really fascinating stuff. So now that we have talked about history and some interesting facts about energy, let's introduce you to the Energy Committee at the Little Rock Sustainability Commission. We will briefly share with you the bios of a few commissioners who are part of the Energy Committee. Lenny Messonelli, the Recycling and Sustainability Program Coordinator for the City of Little Rock, will read the bios. Hi, Lenny. Thank you for being with us today.
Hi, Karen. Thanks for having me again. I'm happy to be here.
All right.
Well, let's start with Jan Baker. Jan is a civil rights attorney with 25 years of experience in this field. She's also a certified master naturalist from the Central Arkansas Naturalist Association. She is the former president of Walton Heights / Candlewood Homeowner Association, representing 469 families for 6 years. During those 6 years, Jan was responsible for a tree planting project along the road from the bottom of their neighborhood at Cantrell and South Bridge, leading to the top of the neighborhood. Jan also oversaw the creation of a walking trail from their neighborhood to Connor Park and another trail from the neighborhood to River Mountain Park. Both trails were eventually taken over by the Little Rock Parks and Recreation. Next we have Grant Dunsing. Grant has been involved with the Commission and the Energy Committee since 2017 and was the chair of the Energy Committee in 2019. He works in energy management at UAMS. He has been in that role for 4 years. Primarily, he has been involved in projects pursuing demand reduction. Some of the projects he has been part of involve improved automation of the lab space, making it safer, better controlled, and more efficient, more effective analytics, and more clear reporting of the behavior of UAMS campus's energy-consuming equipment. Through his work at the Sustainability Commission, Grant works with other commissioners to reach the Energy Committee's objectives, some of which are lowering energy use by the city and helping people afford energy improvements at their own property. Grant is a lifelong resident of Little Rock and holds a Bachelor of Science in Mechanical Engineering. He is a certified energy manager as well as a certified healthcare facility manager.
Awesome. Cool. Thank you, Lenny. We have really great commissioners in our Energy Committee. We will also get to know about Andrew Jester, who is the current chair of the Energy Committee and the current vice chair of the Sustainability Commission. Andrew will be here with us today as part of our roundtable. Today's roundtable is going to be very interesting. We have 3 awesome Arkansans who are doing great work in the energy industry in our beautiful state. Our first guest is April Ambrose. April is a business development manager for the Sustainability and Energy Division and Integrity located here in Little Rock. She has been involved with the design and implementation of over 250 sustainable building projects. She is a lead fellow, and for those of you who may not be too familiar with this term, LEED means Leadership on Energy and Environmental Design. And she holds a self-designed Bachelor's of Arts in Environmental Education from Hendrix College. April was also the first chair of the Little Rock Sustainability Commission and is the founder of Arkansas Earth Day Foundation and is a founding member of the Arkansas, Tennessee, Louisiana International Society of Sustainability Professionals. We are lucky that she calls Little Rock her home. Hi, April. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me and all these great panelists.
Okay, thanks. Our second guest today is Doug Hutchinson. He is a scientist, inventor, and a pioneer in the Arkansas solar industry. He is the founder and CEO of Delta Solar, a leading Arkansas tech company in solar power. A Hendrix College graduate, Doug earned his PhD in microelectronic photonics from the University of Arkansas. He pioneered new techniques to improve the efficiency of solar cells and was named one of the top nation's new inventors by Inventors Digest. Doug formed Delta Solar to lower the cost of commercial and agricultural installations and build a solar industry in Arkansas. Today, he is applying the science to businesses and continues to develop new technologies behind Delta Solar. Hi, Doug. Welcome to the show.
Hi, and thanks for having me. I'm excited for the conversation.
Great. And our last but not least third guest is Andrew Jester. Andrew has been involved with energy-saving projects through cost-effective energy solutions on hundreds of buildings throughout our country. He graduated from the University of Arkansas Walton College of Business. He has helped the properties of his clients become the most energy-efficient buildings in the country, granting several of them Energy Star certifications. Andrew is a certified energy manager through the Association of Energy Engineers and is also a LEED accredited professional. After saving one hospital millions of dollars in energy consumption, he became an award-winning energy professional. He currently volunteers on the Little Rock Sustainability Commission as the co-chair of the commission, and he is also the chair of the Little Rock Energy Committee. He loves working with businesses to help save money. Hey, Andrew, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
All right, well, what a great group of people we have on our show today. I want to start our conversation by asking all of you how you became so interested in energy and sustainability. Was there a specific time in your life that you remember kind of like a pivotal point that prompted you to take this trajectory? Let's start with you, April.
Well, first, thank you, Karen, Lenny, Melinda, and the whole Little Rock Sustainability Commission for developing this show. The creation of the show, among many other innovations out of that group, shows just how far the commission's come since I chaired it about a decade ago. But to answer your question, my apple didn't fall far from the tree. My parents were back to the landers in the 70s, so our house collected rainwater from the roof into a cistern. We had composting toilets, a 2-acre organic garden, an orchard, stocked pond, and root cellar for storing everything. So when I got to college at Hendrix, I was kind of appalled that everybody didn't know where their resources came from and set out to educate accordingly. I developed a major in environmental education, got a teaching certificate, did my student teaching, and then realized it could take a lifetime to institutionalize sustainability curricula in the public school setting. So instead, I started a nonprofit, Arkansas Earth Day, which at its peak had about 15,000 in attendance at their festival. And during that time, I also began working on climate change policy for what is now the Pew Charitable Trust. But it turns out I needed more wins than the political engine could give me. So it was actually through all of that work that I met the visionary Chris Ladner, who had just started his green building company, which is now Integrity. As the first employee, Chris calls me a type A hippie that addressed sustainability in buildings. And that kind of seemed accidental at first, but it seems more synchronistic as our impact increases. Since buildings are such a large contributor to greenhouse gases, focusing on their innovation is a highly effective way to correct our climate change path. And I'm not an engineer, but I'm always looking to have the largest impact with the least input. And I think I also am always trying to unify seemingly opposing themes like health and the environment or for finance and sustainability. So for me, my sustainability and energy interest is much more than an aha moment. It was really more like a life trajectory.
Awesome. Okay. Thanks for sharing that. What an interesting story. Okay, Doug, what about you?
Yeah, I do think it's funny. There probably was a pivotal moment for me. So, I grew up working on farms down in Mena, Arkansas, and so I've always had an interest in how we utilize, the limited resources we have. But I think my pivotal moment was when I got to the University of Arkansas and was trying to decide where to focus my efforts for my master's and PhD. Kind of the three big trends that always stood out to me was water, agriculture, and energy. And so I knew I wanted to work on one of those three. And, there's some flaws to my argument looking back. But in my head, if you could have a big impact on the energy side of that, then that naturally improved the other two, right? So if you can make the cost of energy trivial, well, then desalination of water becomes much cheaper, so you kind of impact the water side. And when you talk to farmers down in southeast Arkansas, a large part of their expense is their electric costs, right? So in my head, energy seemed like the one that I could have the biggest impact on. And so when I finished my PhD, I've been always interested in solar, and this is back in kind of 2005 to 2009. I was just convinced that this trend for solar was going to happen, and having an energy source with no moving parts that you stick out in the field and it tirelessly works for you for the next 30 plus years, it just seemed like an undeniable trend that whose time had come. And so, I dove into it full-heartedly, and it's been, as everyone on this call knows, it's been a wild ride in solar, and it's a real exciting time.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been a clouded time. Thank you for that. And what about you, Andrew?
Well, I didn't have such a coming-of-age story as our other two guests. I guess mine was more brought about by financial concerns. Most of my sustainability interest and energy conservation is really driven by financials. And if it can't save money, there's really no purpose in pursuing a project. And that's going to be counters to some of my colleagues out there. But the truth of the matter is, if it doesn't get financed, it's not going to be installed. So that was what I've always focused on. I guess my trajectory in sustainability started in 6th grade when I was elected class president, because I promised everybody a piece of candy for bringing in a handful of trash. Needless to say, I won that election. I don't remember buying anybody candy, though. So I may have failed my classmates on that. For the last 10 years, I've worked in contracting and sustainability in the engineering world, working in hospitals and big healthcare facilities, saving energy by optimizing how they operate and maintain their building. There's a lot of energy wasted out there, and that's what I really stuck to, was to focus on that waste and be more sustainable by being more conservative with our existing resources.
Great. And thank you, Andrew. You bring that passion to the commission and by leading the energy committee. So we're thankful to have you on board.
Thank you.
All right. So my next question to our guests is, how do you think energy and sustainability coexist? Let's start with you again, April.
So Integrity has the first LEED Zero energy project in the country, the second in the world, and we're piloting a new guaranteed energy service where we can guarantee that a project will achieve net zero. So we can design an extremely efficient net zero energy building. We have all of the technology to do so. And of course, net zero energy is producing as much energy as you use on a net annual basis. But if we were designing that purely to achieve that goal, that building might not have any windows, not have a very comfortable set point, have very little outside air, for example. We don't design buildings to be efficient alone. We design them for humans. We design them for the occupants, or we should. Accordingly, sustainability, which of course is the idea that we're also giving future generations the ability to flourish, depends on both energy and sustainability. So on our net zero energy buildings, our sustainability teams are who integrate to help add daylight, though appropriate to the occupant's use of the space, fresh air balanced with energy and cost, individual thermal comfort controls to help people feel comfortable even if the building set points are a slight bit higher or lower than normal, and ensure that healthy materials are used, among many other criteria whose goal is to balance people, planet, and profit. So in turn, the energy criteria for these types of buildings have huge financial benefit, and I know we're going to talk about that a little bit more, but they can also help to offset the minimal added cost of some of these additional sustainability features. So in my mind, you can't have a truly sustainable building if you haven't addressed energy. Simultaneously, if you only address energy, then we've not truly addressed the pillars of people, planet, and profit for sustainability.
Yes, 100%. April, before I move on to our other two guests, do you want to share with the audience a little bit about your integrity and what you guys are doing? I know there is one of the buildings that you guys are building one in Soma, and then the only one that I think is like carbon neutral in the state is in the country is here in Little Rock, right?
Yeah, so our headquarters office is over behind the Clinton Library on East 6th Street, and it's a mid-century modern historic building that we have retrofitted to be LEED Platinum and LEED Zero Energy. We do a lot of projects locally, but our geographic focus has expanded, and we've actually done work in over 45 states in the country now, as well as some international work as well. Our goal is to optimize building performance and the occupant experience through a variety of services, building certifications like LEED certification, commissioning, verifying that systems work correctly as they were intended, energy modeling to model the performance of a new construction building, or audits to improve the performance of existing buildings, and then building testing, of course, to prove that. A few years ago, we bundled all of those services together and are able to finance those through energy savings performance contracting. And I'll actually talk a little bit more about that later, but that allowed us to move from pure consulting into kind of financed implementation, where we started adding LED lights that we bring directly from China, have manufactured according to the highest standards there, as well as solar. So our goal now is to, I kind of call that side of the company the financing arm, or the financial leverage to do these great consulting services that we've been doing for years.
Awesome. To our Little Rockers, this should be a sense of pride for you all to have such an amazing company headquartered here in Little Rock. Okay, well, Doug, what about you?
I would echo that, sustainability and energy go hand in hand. To me, sustainability is all about the effective use of resources. And if you look nationally in the United States, the median American household spends about 20% of their after-tax income on energy, either for their household or their transportation. And it's skewed towards lower-income Americans who are obviously paying more than that 20%. And so, energy is impossible. It's one of our largest expenses as a society. If you look at the manufacturing sector, in some cases, energy accounts for up to 75% of the final product cost, right? And so, how do we take energy for granted sometimes in terms of the sheer quantity and magnitude that we consume on an annual basis. And to me, it just goes hand in hand with how do we use it responsibly? How do we use it in a manner that, to April's point, doesn't disadvantage future generations? And sustainability is a lot broader than energy. It can cross-cut everything we consume in life. But from my perspective, energy is the sector that I am personally most excited about in terms of having an impact.
I agree, and I personally think it's one of the most important sectors in sustainability. Thank you for sharing that with us, Doug. Okay, Andrew, what about you? What do you think is how does sustainability and energy coexist?
I agree with Doug that energy is one of the biggest drivers of sustainability in our current economy and our current social environment. I also agree with April that the building sciences has recently become more integral to looking at energy and looking at occupant comfort to satisfy the needs of whatever's being constructed. Not too long ago, buildings were just built big old boxes, and we'll throw some air into them. Occupants weren't very happy; they didn't get very much outdoor lighting. Now we see the increase in productivity you can provide by making your occupants happy and your employees happy. The long-term cost of a building, 90% of it is the employees that occupy it. So you want to spend a little bit more effort to try to make them happy. And one way to do that is through energy efficient measures and lead programs for more daylighting, more energy efficiency, more ventilation requirements, those kind of things for energy sustainability. But as far as the long-term trends in energy, I think we're going to see an inversion in the energy markets in the not too distant future when solar becomes more prolific. We'll also see a proliferation of battery technology to store the solar. So my hopes and my dreams at some point in the future, electricity kilowatts during the day will actually have a negative value, which will help production in our economy.
Awesome. Yeah, you are 100% right. I agree with that. Okay, we have our next question is, what do you all think is the most significant change that you have seen within the energy industry?
We just did that one.
Let's go ahead with April.
So it's definitely finance. For such a long time, renewable energy and energy efficient technologies seemed pretty expensive compared to oil-based energy, especially subsidized oil-based energy. But the cost of solar panels, LED lights, efficient HVAC, good insulation, have all come down enough that they can provide relevant payback on their performance, and even provide greater investment payback than a lot of current traditional investments. So I mentioned I would talk about ESPC, or Energy Savings Performance Contracting. That allows for a project to bundle together a number of those installations as long as they save energy and are cash flow positive in year one. So this is how schools are now getting leaky roofs and windows replacing outdated equipment with efficient versions, and getting solar all under one contract, which then immediately saves them money, allowing for sustainability curriculum integration or even teacher raises. So that financing mechanism, coupled with good legislation like solar net metering, where you can apply solar to many electric meters owned by the same entity in one location, and good finance mechanisms like PACE or green bonds. PACE is property assessed clean energy that allows you to put the improvements for a building to be paid back on property taxes, which means that if you don't intend to be in your building for very long, you can still make the appropriate upgrades to a building, and the next building owner who experiences those reduced utility bills will be paying for those appropriately as well. So all of those things sort of protect financial investment for renewable and energy efficient installation, and that investment allows for a major shift in the energy industry. For so many years, investors were scared, I think, because it seemed like the industry was unproven. That is definitely no longer the case. I can't tell you how many emails I get a day of, I'm ready to invest in renewables and energy efficiency. So that trend is changing. Finance is definitely the biggest thing in this industry, which has allowed all of us, all three of us on the call and many more, to explode our companies, create jobs, and continue improving the economic viability here in Arkansas.
Wonderful. Thank you, April. What about you, Doug? What do you think is the most significant change you have seen within the energy industry?
I would mostly echo what April said. I piggyback, Andrew said earlier, right, around, we've done a lot of projects where the owner absolutely cared about the environmental benefits and the sustainability aspects, we've never done a project that didn't make financial sense, right? And so that's kind of the bottom line on unlocking all of these other advantages that we care so deeply about. And I'd say, in Arkansas, prior to 2017, any solar project that was done in the state was probably done with more emphasis on the non-financial benefits, for better or for worse. And in 2017, as cost reduction in solar had just reached the point where there was this fundamental shift from, instead of having to convince someone, why would I do this? It almost became much more of a, why wouldn't I do this conversation. Mm-hmm. And I think that, there's still a large educational piece to solar, and it's definitely not a silver bullet for all cases. But that fundamental shift in people's minds from why would I do this to why wouldn't I do this, I think one is fascinating and important from a national perspective, and I think it's going to have implications across many different industries moving forward.
Great.
I'd like to add to that and say, nobody does a project when it's not financially feasible, but while I think the shift is that it's financially feasible on paper. So something that was said earlier that Andrew said about, a lot of these impacts on employees in a building have productivity gains, or in schools, higher test scores. There are financial benefits to those things, but it's very difficult to put a number to those. And we are finally getting to a point where some companies have found ways to model that. But when companies earlier were, I call it the Priusization effect, where they were paying for a Prius even though the numbers didn't work on paper yet, because they cared about the larger environment. They were internalizing things that were normally externalized. But a lot of the companies that we worked with had reasons for doing what they were doing, and they were confident that it would have a financial impact for them, whether it be through marketing or competitive advantage or, improving productivity of their employees, none of which were very easily put on paper. I think the change is you can put it on paper, you can guarantee those savings, and you can now get money loaned against it. And that, to me, is the really big shift.
Wonderful. All right. Thank you, April. Andrew, what do you think?
I agree with April and Doug that the biggest shift is in the financial aspect of sustainability and energy efficiency. Mainly, I see it as technology has progressed to a point where the price is competitive with the existing commodity-based products such as coal and natural gas. So before it was commodity-based restrictions on energy costs. Now we're in a technology product cycle, so to speak. So LED lights weren't even efficient, weren't even considered 10 years ago as a retrofit because it would cost too much to purchase them and install them. Nowadays, there's no reason not to install LED lights across all of your buildings. The same thing with many other technologies, from heating and air conditioning to ventilation and a lot of other daylighting options to help energy efficiency. So I think just the technology is progressing faster and faster, and costs are decreasing quicker and quicker. So now we're at a point that never has happened historically, that where sustainable technologies are on a parity with non-sustainable technologies. And what I mean by that, it costs the same to build a non-efficient building as it is to build a efficient building. Mm-hmm. With all that in mind, it takes a little bit more effort, but it literally costs no different.
Yep, there is more intentionality behind
Correct.
Sustainability. All right, well, my last question is about the future. We all know that the planet's natural resources are very limited. This creates a challenge for future generations. That being said, where do you think the energy industry is going to be in the next 5 or 10 years? Let's start with you, April.
So I would like to think that Little Rock and Arkansas are going to learn from other states who have already been doing a lot of this, and a lot of other countries who have been doing this. So Andrew mentioned, like in California, they have negative energy pricing. So they have so much renewable energy being put on the grid that they don't have enough demand to use it at certain times of the day. At some point here, we're going to have to temper all of the solar that we're putting on the grid with battery and other types of storage, or other forms of renewable energy generation that can occur at night, like wind, which is good in Arkansas, just a little bit higher, 125 feet or so in the air. And in addition, I think we're going to have to think about resiliency in the face of climate change's increased natural disasters. So the two of those go hand in hand, but we may have to start thinking less about large utility scale, solar farms and therefore distribution, and be looking at smaller distributed energy systems that might serve smaller areas like smaller neighborhoods. And then last, I would say that there's still more to come in the finance industry. I think the next goal is that companies like ours will stop selling, the way that they calculate savings and how they're doing these projects and simply guaranteeing them. Way back when Clinton was governor of Arkansas, he expressed that as the future, and it is taking us a long time to get there, but I think that we are there, and we have the opportunity. We know enough about the technologies, the products, and the finance that we can guarantee energy savings, guarantee solar production, and therefore guarantee net zero and some resiliency strategies. So I think that's what the future holds for us. And in turn, it holds a much more positive future for all of us.
Yes, it does. Great. Thank you, April. What about you, Doug? What do you think?
It's a fascinating question to me, right? Because in the energy space, right, we took an industry that was used to thinking of an innovation cycle on the order of decades, right, and implemented solar is semiconductor, right? So it's the same innovation cycle almost that you have in your iPhone, right? And so how often are you getting updated specs on your iPhone? And so this change in the innovation cycle has just led to this exponential decrease in costs and exponential increase in deployments. And the human brain doesn't do a good job thinking about exponential growth, right? So if you take I like the example of if you take a piece of paper and you fold it in half, right, it doubles in thickness. If you fold it again, it doubles in thickness. How thick will it be after 25 folds? And how thick would it be after 40 folds? And you can check my math, but after 25, if you could do it, right, it'd be about as tall as the Empire State Building. At 40, it would reach all the way to the moon, right? And it's that sort of exponential growth that is happening in our energy space. And solar is doubling market size every 2.5 years, and we're only about 5 doublings away from it providing 100% of our energy generation. Now, we're not ever going to power ourselves 100% by solar, but those are the kind of meaningful time frames that we need to be thinking about for this stuff to have an outsized impact. And to April's point about policy, right, the challenge with policy is the things we are doing now are sometimes in response to the situations we have now, where really we need to take into consideration and have the flexibility for this exponential trends that we're seeing in the space. So I think it's fascinating, and it's going to be an exciting couple of decades in energy.
Thank you, Doug. Yeah, I agree with you. Go ahead, April.
Great analogy. I love that. 5 doublings away. I dig it.
All right. Well, what about you, Andrew? What do you think?
My vision's a little bit long-term than 5 or 10 years. I think that we're going to have a technology ecosystem built around our energy infrastructure. As April said, we're going to have microgrids and more resilient technologies. We're only one big storm away from knocking out hundreds of thousands of people from being provided electricity. We're going to have more local generation. We're going to have more institutions installing solar and things like that, so there's going to be more distributed generation. I think that currently you can get your air conditioning system to shut off with Entergy's demand increasing. I think in the future, all buildings are going to interact with the electrical grid to both ramp up and ramp down what their usage is based on what the grid is doing. So if there's a big windstorm and you need to use up a bunch of wind energy, I think that the ecosystem is going to allow the users of that energy to ramp up usage to help use up that energy before it does any damage to the system.
Okay, great. Okay, well, time flies when you are having a good time and learning great things. Unfortunately, our time together today has come to an end, But I want to thank all of you for spending this time with us and with the Little Rock community. Thank you, April, Doug, and Andrew, for being here. This has been a very enriching conversation.
Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
No problem. Thank you, April.
Thank y'all. Very exciting.
Thanks. Next section, A Look Around the World, is a section that shows us the work that other cities are doing regarding sustainability. As a world traveler, I really like this section, not only because we get to learn what other cities are doing in the sustainability sector, but we also get to learn some geography and interesting things about other communities. Today's subject, energy, takes us to Boston, Massachusetts. In 2019, Boston was named the most efficient city or the most efficient energy city in the country. But before I share with you all why was Boston named the most efficient city in the USA, I want to share a few cool, interesting facts about this northern city. The capital of Massachusetts has the very first public library opened in the USA. The Boston Public Library was founded in 1849. And well, actually, since Boston is one of the oldest cities in the country, this city has many firsts. Boston has the first subway system in America, which was protected by the very first police force in the country. This was in 1838. Also, Boston is home to many inventions. Did you know that the microwave was accidentally invented in Boston? Also, Facebook was invented in Harvard, which is located in this city, and the World Wide Web, which was invented in MIT, was also invented in Boston. So every time that you go to www, you will know that this was created in this northern city. This is fascinating stuff, isn't it? Okay, so now that we have learned some interesting facts about Boston, let's talk about why is this city named the most energy efficient city in the country. Boston was ranked the leading U.S. city for energy efficiency by the nonprofit American Council for an Energy Efficiency Economy, ACEEE. The city scorecard tracks policy efforts to advance energy efficiency and, for the first time, renewable energy, because both are needed to build a clean future and address climate change, according to ACEEE. Boston was followed in the rankings by San Francisco, Seattle, Minneapolis, Washington, D.C., New York City, Los Angeles, Denver, Austin, and Portland. Boston scoring recognized its efforts to increase renewable energy in the grid mix through programs such as its Municipality Energy Initiative and its progress with Community Choice Energy. The city's Municipality Energy Initiative, known as Renew Boston Trust, identifies energy-saving projects in city-owned buildings. The projects are self-funded through guaranteed energy and cost savings, meaning they pay for themselves over time. The information that I am sharing with you all today was a section taken from the Start Cities World, which you can find it in www.startcitiesworld.net. This is an amazing initiative that could be implemented in many cities around the country, including our beautiful city here in Little Rock. Well, our time together is ending, but before we go, I want to share with you some sustainability tips for this week related to energy. My first tip of the day would be become very familiar with your energy bill. Learn how to read it, understand where your money is going, and look for opportunities to reduce consumption where you see might work. Remember, the less energy you use, the less money you will be spending. And saving money is something all of us could do, right? We also want to ask you, have you changed all your light bulbs to LED lights? Not only do they use less energy, but they also last longer. Lastly, now that winter is coming, I encourage to look around the house or your apartment for holes that heat could leave through, like to escape, the heat could escape our homes. If you have them fixed, or if you want them to get fixed, please don't forget that there are organizations that can help you fix those problems at no cost. If you want more information, please send us an email at littlerock.gov. Ok, hablemos rápidamente sobre algunos tips para organizar, para poder ahorrar dinero por medio de nuestro consumo de energía. Primero que todo, te aconsejo que te familiarices con tu recibo de la luz. Aprende muy bien cuáles son los cargos y cómo están divididos. Esto te va a dar ideas en dónde podrías empezar a ahorrar dinero. Y también, ¿tienes bombillas de alta eficiencia en tu hogar? ¿Sabías que ellas usan mucho menos energía que las bombillas normales y también duran mucho más? Solo con cambios tan simples como cambiar las bombillas, te vas a ahorrar mucho dinero y lo vas a dejar en tu bolsillo. Finalmente, ya que pronto llega el invierno, mira bien en tu hogar si tienes algún escape de aire, ¿no? Por las ventanas, las puertas, los pisos. Recuerda que por ahí no solo se escapa la calefacción, sino también nuestro dinero. Y si tú quieres arreglar estos problemitas en tu hogar, hay organizaciones que te pueden ayudar sin costo adicional. Okay, well, this week I want to, for the Eco Challenge of the week, I want to challenge you to become a little bit more sustainable by making sure that you only run your dishwasher when it's fully loaded. If you only have a few dishes on the sink, either quickly wash them by hand or wait until you have more dishes to run the dishwasher. Not only is this good to save energy, but also water. Si tú lavas tus platos en la lavadora, recuerda que usa el lavaplatos cuando esté súper lleno y no si solamente tienes unos platitos, ¿no? Porque pues ahí estás gastando energía y estás gastando agua. Y si tienes todo lleno, vas a estar ahorrando dinero por medio del ahorro de agua y energía. Okay, well, we are almost done with the show of the day, and I only want to say that we all have been affected in some way or other by COVID-19, and I want you all to know that you're not alone in your worry about the world. Everyone has been impacted by the reality of living through this pandemic. We are all still trying to figure it out. It is our hope that the tips, ideas, and conversations that we will have together on this show and that we are having on the show will give you the tools to help you through the pandemic and beyond. To all my listeners, if you have suggestions, ideas, or comments, and you would like to share regarding sustainability, email us at recycle at littlerock.gov.
Yes.
And we will respond to as many of you as possible. Mm-hmm. Again, I would like to thank our special guests, April Ambrose, Doug Hutchinson, and Andrew Jester. And I would also like to thank our chosen sponsor, the Little Rock Sustainability Office, for their support and collaboration. Last but not least, big thanks to the listening audience for spending your time with us this evening, and be sure to tune into our next Little Rock Sustainability episode. Para toda nuestra audiencia latina, muchas gracias por haber sintonizado el programa. Si ustedes tienen ideas o comentarios, por favor escríbanos at recycled at littlerock.gov. Yes. No olvides en acompañarnos en el próximo show. Buenas noches and bye guys, and see you next time.